Hey everyone, Sakuryasin here, and in this series I wanted to give advice that I wish I knew when I was starting out in art. And this episode is going to be about warm and cool colors because when I was starting out, I would hear things like, okay, let's say I was looking at an image like this. People would say, or I would hear, like, those mountains are very purple, or they're very blue, and in the background. And I would be like, huh? they I mean, it looks kind of gray to me, not blue. um but people would say, oh, that's blue, and I would be like, okay, and that's a cool color, and I would say, okay. And for me, like, even if you look at this mountain we color pick, you can see here it's blue, here it gets a bit more purple, but it's like, it's gray. It's still like, this is the hue. Like, all this up and down, that's the hue. And then this is the saturation. So no saturation means gray. A lot of saturation means whatever the color is, it's a lot of that. Um, so this is kind of what we typically think of colors, like red, purple, blue, you know? Um, but they were saying, like, this is blue, and this, to me, this color here looks like gray. So I would be like, I don't see it. What I didn't know is what they meant by warm and cool, and what determines that, and what they meant by blue. For instance, like the sky, clearly to me, this is blue. Like, yeah, I get it. The sky is blue. Um, so what do they mean? What do people mean when they talk about warm and cool colors? Well, I heard that blue is cool and red and orange are warm. Um, but that's like half the story. So here's the full story as I know now. So first of all, warm and cool are subjective. If I made like this, just blue, is that warm or cool? The answer is, I don't know. You can't tell if this is warm or cool if it's by itself. You can only tell if it's warm or cool compared to something else. So if I put another color down like this, then I can say, okay, compared to this yellow, the blue is more cool. But if I put a color like this, then it would be, okay, compared to this, I don't know, desaturated teal-ish color, the blue is warm. So warm and cool don't mean anything if you only have one color. They are only important in relation to the things around them. Second thing is that, okay, yes, you have the blues are generally more cool than the reds. However, that's only going up and down this hue shifting. So hue just is the color. What I didn't know is that saturation also determines whether something is warm or cool. So something that is saturated is warm, or warmer. Yeah, I guess warmer and cooler are better than warm and cool, because it's not that it's inherently anything, it's only compared to this other thing, it appears like this. So if something's saturated, it's warmer. If something's desaturated, it's cooler. So white is a very cold color, you would say. Like, in actuality, white in terms of light are all the colors, but in terms of like painting, white is very cool. So even if we go to the yellows or the oranges, but we're at pure white, it's very cool. However, if you go towards a more saturated any hue, like even the blues, this is warmer than this. Okay? So you've got two directions. You can either go up and down in hue, either towards a cool, like, again, it's subjective, but when I look at hue, to me, like the coolest hue, the most cold feeling is probably, it's like a, maybe something like that, like some icy type. This feels very cool-ish, but because it's saturated, I register it as warm. But anyway, so in terms of hue, something like that. And in terms of like warm, maybe like a red orange feels the most warm to me. So, but that's subjective. So you might have a different answer. Maybe for you, this feels more warm, or this feels the most cool, or something. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is this direction, left and right, more saturated this way or less saturated. So once you know that, you can start to make sense of how to make something warm or cool. And there's really two ways. You can warm or cool the hue, and you can increase or decrease the saturation. So in classical paintings, there was kind of a method that was often used, which is whatever the lights are, you make the shadows the opposite. So if the lights, the things in light, are generally cool, then the things in shadow would generally be warmer. And if the things in light are generally warm, then the things in shadow are generally cooler. But what certain artists found, and I learned this from Richard Schmid, is that when things get warm, like really warm, they tend to, really dark, sorry. When they get very dark, they tend to warm up. And so it kind of, and also white in painting, in classical painting, the pigment that is used for white tends to be very cool. So, and when you add white to something, it gets sort of pasty, right? So let's show an example. So here I have this purpley tone, right? All right. Now I'm gonna have white. Okay. So as I add white to this, it gets sort of pasty and desaturated. So if we look on our color picker, we can see this is more saturated, meaning warmer. This is less saturated, meaning cooler. And this is white, meaning very cold. So it makes more sense as you go towards the light to cool things down, because it just works with like natural paint more. And when you go towards the shadows, warm things up. So like, it's arguable. Someone could say like this is cooler than this in temperature. Sort of, yeah, you could make that argument. And so with that in mind, you would kind of have an arc where it's like this is actually the warmest, and then it gets cooler as it goes down and cooler as it goes this way. I just found it easier to think of it more like anything on this side is warm, anything on this side is cool. And so when I go towards shadows, see how I'm getting, let's say I wanted light in the, cool in the lights, then I might start like in this area. But then because I want warm shadows, what I do is I tend to move that way. Like as I get darker, I go more down towards the right side of this color picker, which is more towards the warms, the more saturated colors. On something like this type of color wheel, you've got the hue on the outside, this ring, and the saturation is up and down, and then the value is up and down, and the saturation is left and right. So this is desaturated, this is saturated. So if you want something warm, you move in this direction, and if you want to cool it down, you move it in this direction. Now that kind of works. So this bottom row is like the saturated line, I guess. And then this one is just value, and this one is also saturation. So that works too. Okay, so the next thing is the thing I mentioned about blues and stuff. So this is also something I wish I knew, which is that when they say a thing becomes blue, they just mean blue-ish. So, okay, let's say you had this as your gray. All right, well, it looks gray, right? Yeah, but technically it's in the yellow family. It's on this yellow thing. So if I go towards blue, that is now a blue. You might think, but it's just gray. Yeah, but it's a blue gray. So let's put down a warm gray here. And let's put down a cool gray here. Okay, kind of hard to see. Let me move it. All right, there. Still hard to see the difference, right? But an artist would say this is blue and this is orange. So that's something to just get in your head when people are saying cool it down. It doesn't mean you go like blue like that, which in this case is still very desaturated. It means you move towards one of two directions. You can either move towards the less saturated version and it will become more cool or more blue, or you could move it in hue towards blue. So in this case, it's moved in hue towards blue. In this case, it's moved in hue towards the orange. But let's say this was the original color, and I want to make this more blue or more cool. I can do two directions. Either I can do that and make it more cool, or I can do this and just lower the saturation. And this is more blue than this, even though both of them are orange. So that is what I wish I knew when I started. It would have made things much easier. I would have not been so confused when people said like, these mountains are blue or these mountains are purple. Because I would have looked at it like, that doesn't look blue to me, but it's like, oh, blue-ish or less saturated. Ah, okay. And then you learn like within a painting, there's so much subtlety. Like here, see how like subtle these changes are? But you look at it and it's like, well, that's green grass, right? But in terms of color, it's very yellow, because all of these things only matter in relation to something else. Like this, you could say like, oh, but this is definitely green. It's like, no, it's a yellow. It's actually a orange. But this is like, yeah, we're getting towards greens. Here we're at like yellow greens. But you know, it's still like, how come when you look at this, you totally see green, and when you color pick, it's like very close to yellows and oranges. And it's because everything's relative. So you look at this and you look at the colors around it and you say, what is this color compared to the colors around it? All these shadows and dark areas are so warm that a yellow by contrast looks green. So, yep, that's my explanation of warm and cool colors and what I wish I knew when I started. Hope this helped, and thanks for watching.